Our resident lawyer, Despina Priala of boutique law firm Priala Legal in Runaway Bay, is with us every Thursday to offer her legal expertise by providing some general advice on the latest hot topics. Of course, having experience spanning more than 25 years in the area of property and commercial law, she joins us now. Good morning, Despina.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning,
Good
Despina,
morning.
and welcome back. Now, this morning, a couple of interesting topics. A little bit later on, we're going to talk about whether a business owner can decide who they serve, who they allow into their business and who they don't allow. That'll be a bit later on. But first, we're going to cover the topic of woke corporations. Now, we're hearing this term quite a lot these days. People are woke, businesses are woke. So before we actually get into what we're going to talk about, can you briefly explain to us what that term means, woke?
So it's been used a lot and people probably don't know what the heck is woke, and virtual signaling. So it's really about people coming out and making statements and commentary and taking a stance on social justice issues, basically, and moral issues, and touching upon society's values and saying, well, this is what I think, and that's what I'm going to state. So there's a lot of it going around, and it's within the context of people using sometimes their position and their powers, like corporations, coming out and making certain statements and commentaries about, well, this is what we think, and this is how we want society to follow or to become or to change, because we think these are the right morals and values that people should adopt.
And this can obviously be quite dangerous considering big corporations, the public listens to these guys. So what danger are we falling into?
Well, that's right. It's exactly. So we've got corporations, and I think it's important to talk about it because I don't think that people, when they see ads, whether it's a television ad, an ad on YouTube, or listening to someone on the radio or elsewhere, they don't really understand perhaps what's happening out there in society, and subconsciously they're taking on the message that that particular ad or marketing is actually portraying. And I think that's wrong. So what I'm talking about is corporations that are using their position particularly, that are sending messages about morals and values in society. So they're trying to become the social and moral compass for all of us. And really what they should be doing is sticking to selling their product.
So why are they doing it?
Well, in my view, and it's a view that's not out of left field, it's a view that's held by quite a few people around Australia and elsewhere around the world, particularly America, is that they're trying to cover or widen their customer and product base. That's what they're trying to do. So they've got people in their corporations in terms of marketing. So they go around and they say, look, we've got a product to sell. Why don't you people go and find out what we need to be telling society? What do they want to hear as to what's happening around the world? And then we're going to take that information and we're going to market our product on that basis. So if certain people want to hear certain things about certain movements in society, the Me Too movement, or this other issue that's around at the moment about this supposed male toxicity that has to be addressed, and whether or not it does at all, and that's another issue. They're using their product, and then they're sending those underlying messages, or sometimes quite direct messages, in when they're selling their product, and saying to people, well, this is what we think you should know and believe and understand and follow whilst we're selling our product. And a classic example, if I could mention it, is the Gillette ad. So everyone knows Gillette, and Gillette is a company that sells razors to men, obviously, and they've been doing it for, I don't know how long.
Forever.
For
Years and years and
long,
years and
long
years.
time. And whilst I won't go into the details specifically too much about the ad, there is an ad that they created some time ago, or in recent times, and it's on YouTube, and it's a new way of selling their razors.
And do you think, I only just thought of this, but do you think this could possibly even be backlash? Because when you think of Gillette, all I think of is the woman kissing the guy's neck and, this. Sorry, I all of a sudden got all seductive. But you think of...
Sounded good.
You think of those advertisements, and now they've gone completely polar opposite, and they're, like you said, they're going, they're really fighting for that male toxicity and getting rid of it. So do you think it could be backlash from maybe even these, I'm not going to say lefties, but do you know what I mean? Like these people complaining, going, you're making women look, you're portraying women in a way that we don't want to portray them. So let's reverse it so we can up our sales.
So isn't that the point, that what you just said perhaps is correct, where you have big companies like Gillette and they go, okay, we've got a new razor to promote, or maybe they're an existing one, we're going to do it in a different way. Who do they go to get their information about marketing and how to market? They go to their staff, their employees, advertising agencies, and usually they're young, aggressive people who are out there, millennials or others, to say, oh, well, this is what we think you should be doing, and this is what we think society want to hear about everything going on in the world, all the issues. And by the way, we're selling razors. So they're changing the way that they market. And my reason for raising it today is to make people aware that this is actually going on in society, and I think it's wrong, because corporations, they're not a family, they're not the government. So why do they have to, and why should they take a stance on social and moral issues in society? It's not their place and never has been.
So are you suggesting this is just about selling more stuff?
Yes, about broadening their customer base, supposedly, so they cover all of the different groups, if I could call it, in society, about coming and say, well, I'm in this group and I'm in this group and I'm in that group. And they're trying to obviously cover all of the groups out there, as I'm sure all of us are aware that are emerging.
And in this case, Gillette, they sell razors. So at the end of the day, hey, they might get more women buying these particular razors. But say if it is a bigger corporation, and this seems obviously a lot more serious, but say if it was like Virgin or Qantas, what if they had the right to be like, okay, no, you're not allowed on my plane unless you follow, you get a vaccine or something. Like these corporations can end up having this kind of power.
That's right. And
what could happen?
Exactly. So we've got that good example you just mentioned. Richard Branson was publicly came out recently and said, look, everyone should be vaccinated and take the COVID vaccine, I should say specifically. So it's obviously he's made that statement, I think, for clear reasons, in that he wants it's going to help his profit margin by everybody being vaccinated, because we've got issues about can you travel with the COVID vaccine, and there's going to be laws undoubtedly made in the future about that, and perhaps about mandated COVID vaccines for everybody. And I think that's in the pipeline, to be honest, in the next year or two. So for him to come out and make that statement, okay, right or wrong, all right, should we have the COVID vaccine, should we not? That's another issue altogether. But it's not mandated yet. It's not law yet. But he's coming out as the CEO of Virgin, of course, saying everyone should be vaccinated. So everyone's going to perhaps listen to him or not listen to him. So he is using his position, obviously, to help his bottom dollar, and it might be the right position to take. I'm not saying whether it's right or wrong. I'm saying that here is another figurehead who's using his brand and his company to tell people in society what they should be doing. But it's got nothing to do with flying per se, or planes, or what he's doing as a business. He wants his planes full because perhaps he's anticipating that ultimately you won't be able to fly unless you have the COVID vaccine. So he's using his position out there to say, well, this is what we should do. So what I'm saying is that these are corporations taking a stance on social responsibility, and should they, and becoming the moral compass for society. And my view is that they should be sticking to selling what
Razors
their product is,
whatever.
and that's right, and making their shareholders happy by doing what they're supposed to do, rather than saying, well, we're going to take a stance on this social issue now that's emerging through society, COVID vaccine. So is that right or is that wrong? And I think that people need to, when they're viewing ads and listening to those figureheads out there, to truly understand perhaps what the intentions are, and whether they should be following these statements that are made by corporations. Sometimes they're subtle and sometimes they're direct. So, and that's what we're talking about in terms of woke corporations, about corporations taking this stance on social responsibility in society. And I don't think they should be.
So obviously the floodgates have opened. We're seeing this stuff all the time. Is it too late? Has it gone away from us?
Well,
do we
it's
do,
certainly
Despina?
it's certainly out there. It's certainly out there. I think that people need to leave the laws to the lawmakers, which is the government, and let them do their job. And it's difficult to keep up with change in society. We've talked about this before on the show. So many times, and we are just in a time in society now where everything's moving so fast, and we have so many different elements, and we've had, the pandemic last year, and we're still going through that. I mean, look at what's happening in Victoria at the moment. You've now got mandated masks to be worn inside, and you're going to be hit with fines and penalties. I mean, you might have some groups coming out saying, well, that's against my human rights. I don't want to wear a mask. And why am I being fined? Because I'm not wearing a mask, because you tell me to. So, that's, whether it's a right or a wrong law, and we've talked about this before, you need to leave the law making to the lawmakers who've always made those laws. Sometimes they get it right and sometimes they get it wrong. If everybody is out there, like these corporations and other individuals, which we'll talk about in the next segment, saying, well, you can't do this, or you can do this, or you should do this, or you shouldn't do this, well, they're not the government. They are individuals, business owners, corporations going rogue and trying to create these movements in society where come and follow me and listen to me. But that's not the right way to be. We're going to have anarchy otherwise.
Well, as an individual, what would you suggest we do? How do we tell these companies we don't necessarily want you to tell us what to do and what to think and what to hear?
Well, for example, with Gillette, I think they got a strong message from the Backlash, that people came on and sent messages and went on social media and said, various things, but ultimately the point is that a lot of negativity, Gillette should stick to selling razors and not anything else. And there are a lot of people who agreed with that. And I think that Gillette would have taken that on board in their marketing department, and of course ultimately up to the board, and said, you know what, yeah, we might have done the wrong thing there. Maybe we won't be doing ads like that in the future. So don't just sit back and do nothing. Jump on social media and put your views forward. It is freedom of speech. I'm not saying you shouldn't have your freedom and the rights to say what you want to say in a particular way, but by all means do that, because those corporations, if they're listening to their staff about how to promote certain products in one way, they're also going to be listening to what society thinks about that ultimately when it is posted.
And I guess you can always choose to buy a different packet of razors
Well,
or fly
yeah,
with a
of
different
course.
airline. Or,
Exactly.
yeah.
I think the more
you still have a
direct,
choice.
absolutely. I think the more direct approach will be to pass those commentaries, because by the time that company may realise their profit margins are down because people aren't buying that product, might be a year or
Too
two
late.
down the track.
This is Talking Law on Radio 97, and we're speaking with Despina Priala. If you have a question to do with law, then you can drop it in an email to breakfast@radio97.com.au. Coming up after the break, does a business owner have the right to decide who can and who cannot come into their business and do business with them? We'll look at that next.